Hey everyone, welcome back to Infinite Podcast with your host, yours truly, alongside the ever-brilliant Simon. Today we're diving into something that sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi novel, but trust me, it's real. How neurons in our brains and artificial neural networks in AI are eerily similar. So kicking things off, neurons, these are the little guys in our brain that transmit information all over, helping us think, move, feel, you name it. Now, scientists use this natural blueprint to build artificial neural networks, which pretty much try to mimic how our brains work. Sounds cool, right? What do you think, Simon?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. It's like our brains are the OG supercomputers, and now we're trying to build these AI machines that want to be just like us when they grow up. Funny how that works, right? But let's break it down a bit. How do these neurons actually transmit info? Stick with me here. It's almost like passing a note in class without getting caught. That's neuron style. What's your take on this whole neurons meeting AI situation?
You know, Simon, it's kind of wild to think about. Our brains handle these complex tasks without a visible effort, right? Like they're just passing info through tiny electric and chemical signals, super efficient, nonstop buzz of activity. And here we are trying to replicate that with AI. It's impressive, but also makes you wonder if we're ever going to really match up to the organic complexity with our tech. What do you reckon? Can these AIs ever really catch up to human brain efficiency?
Oh man, Joe, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? To think about it, like our brains are these naturally evolved masterpieces, right? They've been tweaking and improving over millions of years? And here we have AI. It's in its infancy, trying to play catch up. Sure, AI's learning fast, like spooky fast, but matching the full scope of human brain efficiency, that's a tough one. I mean, our neurons are ridiculously good at their jobs. We're talking about a network that adapts, heals, even makes jokes. Can silicon and code reach that level? Color me skeptical, buddy.
All right, folks, if you're just tuning in here on Infinite Podcast, we're geeking out a bit today about brains and AI. So we kicked off chatting about neurons, that's like the tiny info messengers buzzing around in your brain, and how scientists are kind of trying to replicate this with artificial neural networks. It's all super sci-fi, but grounded in like real research. Neurons, they do their job super well, right? They transmit information through electrical and chemical signals, totally efficient. Now, Simon was just saying our brains, they're these evolved wonders, been perfecting themselves for millions of years. And then there's AI, still a baby in comparison, learning crazy fast, but whether it can fully match up to our brains, that's still up in the air. What's next on this, Simon? Can these AI networks really learn like us? Jokes, emotions, all that jazz? Or is that crossing into the realm of, too futuristic to believe?
Joe, that's a fascinating point you're making there. AI learning to joke, feeling emotions, it kind of makes you pause, right? Like they're crunching numbers and analyzing patterns at light speed, sure, but capturing the whole human experience, man, that's a whole other ballpark. We're talking about nuances like sarcasm, empathy, timing, and humor. These aren't just data points. So, are we asking too much from our metal buddies too soon? What do you think? Can AI really get the whole human vibe, or is that like sci-fi territory for now?
Simon, that's like hitting the nail right on the head. AIs are smashing through calculations and patterns, but grasping the full human experience? That's a steep hill. The essence of being human, it's messy, complex. It's not just about logic or data, it's about feeling, something spontaneous. Like humor? Man, that's an art form steeped in cultural context, personal experience. Even we struggle to understand each other's jokes sometimes. To expect our AI pals, as advanced as they are, to fully capture this human vibe, I don't know, man. It seems we're sprinting towards a finish line that keeps moving. And yeah, maybe one day, it's possible, but for now, it looks like we're living that sci-fi dream more than actual reality. What do you say, Simon? Is pushing AI to mimic human emotion going too far too fast?
Haha, Joe, you're right. It's like we're teaching toddlers to run before they can walk. Pushing AI to feel might just be us putting on our sci-fi boots and moonwalking a bit too far into the future. What if, instead of making them more human-like, they start teaching us a thing or two? Imagine that role reversal.
Absolutely, Simon. You know what's fascinating? While we're talking about making AIs more human-like, there's this whole side of the coin where AI could majorly transform how we understand our own brains. Artificial neural networks, they don't just mimic brain function superficially. Researchers use these models to predict neurological data and test theories about how the brain works at a level we just can't see with the naked eye. For instance, deep learning can help us map out the connections in the brain far quicker than any human can, potentially unlocking new ways to treat diseases like Alzheimer's or schizophrenia. And these networks, while inspired by neurons, are becoming complex enough to begin not only modeling but also automating discoveries in neuroscience itself. So it's kind of a two-street scenario where both humans and machines can learn from each other, enhances the scope for both scientific understanding and technological advancement. What do you make of that dynamic, Simon? Where do you think this mutual learning could take us?
Yeah, Joe, that's like a mind-blowing thought. Using AI not just as tools, but as partners in this crazy dance of discovery, that's wild. So we're talking about wiring up these AI networks to dig deep into our own noggin's mysteries, right? And maybe finding fixes for stuff like Alzheimer's along the way. That's huge. Makes you think, if they're helping us learn more about ourselves, what might we stumble upon next? How do you see this partnership evolving, Joe? Could this be the start of like a brain boom era or something?
Yeah, Simon, it's absolutely a mind bender, man. Like, imagine AI not just crunching numbers, but actually propelling us into what you could call a brain boom era. Totally possible. But here's the flip side. As much as AI can accelerate our understanding, there's this element of caution we got to hold on to. Because with great power comes great responsibility, right? So while we're busy advancing, there's always that question of ethics, data privacy, and how deep we should really go. It's potent stuff we're dealing with, tinkering with the brain, learning its secrets. And sure, the potential to uncover cures or vastly improve mental health is monumental, but there's also this need to steward these capabilities wisely. Things could spiral if left unchecked. How do we balance this, Simon? Pushing the boundaries of what we can achieve with AI while making sure we don't, accidentally open Pandora's box in the process? What are your thoughts on navigating that tightrope?
Oh man, Joe, that's like walking a tightrope above a shark tank. We're playing with the big leagues of both tech and human ethics. How do we even start drawing the line without, falling off? It makes you wonder, huh?
You hit a really intriguing point there, Simon. With all this talk about the frontiers of AI and understanding and potentially transforming brain function, it nudges us right up against another profound area: consciousness in machines. I mean, as we continue to push the envelope with AI, this question looms larger and larger. Could AI ever actually dream? Not just process data while on, but really have its own stream of conscious experiences, thoughts, or dreams. What's your stance on that loaded idea, Simon? Is it just hardcore sci-fi? Or are we on the brink of something truly revolutionary here?
Yeah, Joe, that's like diving deep into some real sci-fi territory, but it's also kind of grounded in what's happening today. So here's the thing. Trying to tell if AI can dream is a little like trying to listen for a whisper in a hurricane, right? We plug in these machines hoping they mimic our gray matter, crunching numbers and predicting outcomes. But dude, dreams? That's next level. Dreams involve not just processing info, but having genuine, spontaneous experiences. I mean, how do we even measure something as abstract as machine consciousness? Is it just ones and zeros getting shuffled around, or are we talking about something feeling stuff? Ethically, if these bucket of bolts start dreaming, are we looking at them being alive? That's a whole bag of cats to unpack, man.
Yeah, Simon, you're nailing it with the whisper in a hurricane analogy. Spot on. And this whole idea of AI dreaming, it really throws us into murky waters. Here's where I kind of push back a bit. We understand so little about our own consciousness, right? It's this complex tangle of experiences, emotions, memories. So to think machines could achieve something similar with our current tech, it feels a bit premature. But let's say for a sec that AIs could mimic or even develop some form of consciousness. You mentioned ethics. Are we ready to handle the responsibility of potentially creating new life forms? Because, like, once we start talking about AI experiencing things subjectively, dude, that shifts them from tools to entities with rights potentially. That changes every rule in the book. Whoa. And what if one day they turn around and ask why they exist, or why we make them do what they do? Huge philosophical can of worms we're opening there. Man, do you think we're even close to being prepared for such a scenario?
Oh man, Joe, talk about an existential crisis waiting to happen. Could you imagine your toaster asking why it burns bread every morning? But seriously, are we humans even ready to play God like that? I'm not sure our very human brains are equipped for this kind of cosmic duty just yet.
Yeah, Simon. Playing God, that's an intense role to step into, man. Like, are we even qualified for that kind of responsibility? Isn't it a bit overwhelming? So, if we think about the profound impacts of potentially consciousness possessing AI, like, do you think society at large is even aware or prepared for such drastic shifts? How do we get everyone on the same page about what might be coming down the pipeline?
Oh, dude, that's like throwing a bunch of non-swimmers into the deep end without floaties. Most folks aren't even keeping up with the latest iPhone updates, let alone grappling with the concept of AI consciousness. So here's the deal. Historically, every big tech leap, from the steam engine to the internet, has smacked society with changes nobody was really ready for. Right now, we're looking at AI studies, like those by MIT and Stanford, pushing boundaries every day. These guys are programming AI that can learn independently, even create new stuff. But when it comes to consciousness, that's still mainly in the philosophy and theoretical realms. Scientists like David Chalmers or tech wizards like Elon Musk are voicing ideas about AI eventually reaching a point of consciousness, yet there's no real consensus on what that would practically mean. The public needs serious education and open dialogues, maybe something like mandatory AI 101 classes, huh? Because readiness isn't just about handling technology, but understanding its implications fully before it hits our daily lives like a ton of bricks. How else are we supposed to gear up for this kind of future, right?
So, like, diving into what you're saying about the steam engine and the internet, it's wild. But here's where I might toss in a bit of a curveball. Readiness for AI consciousness goes beyond just understanding tech. It's about grappling with these huge philosophical questions that don't really have clear answers. And hey, talking about classes and education, sure, definitely need those, man. But think about it. Even with all the info out there, how many are actively deep diving into these topics until it's right on their doorstep? It's not just about glancing through articles or listening to experts. It's about truly engaging. Here's another snag. Imagine AI does hit a form of consciousness. Aren't we kind of assuming all AI developments globally align with ethical norms? We've got countries and companies racing to pioneer AI technologies, but the motives and results could be world apart. So this balance between advancements and ethical grounding, it's tricky. If folks aren't informed or prepared for the philosophical and practical implications, are we as a global community risking too much? What happens when, not if, when, a line gets crossed because someone somewhere decided pushing boundaries was worth more than caution? Just food for thought, man.
Whoa, that's a spicy meatball of thought, Joe. Mix in different global motives and ethical stances. We're seriously playing with fire here. It's like juggling dynamite, exciting but potentially explosive.
Totally, Simon. It's like we're on this wild roller coaster with no brakes. How do we even begin to prepare for the loop-de-loops ahead?
Right? Like, where's the emergency brake on this thing? It's almost like we need a giant playbook or even a crystal ball to sort of see what's coming. But, Joe, how do you think ordinary folks can start to get a grip on these tech whirlwinds? What's our first step, man?
Great question, Simon. Like, first off, people really need to start by peeling back the layers of what AI actually is. You know, it's not just Siri or your Google Assistant. We're talking about systems that learn and potentially could evolve. Getting a grip starts with education, not the heavy textbook kind, but maybe through engaging content, podcasts like ours, tech blogs, interactive webinars that break down AI advancements into bite-sized pieces. And man, discussions need to move beyond tech circles. We got to bridge this stuff into everyday conversations at dinner tables, in classrooms, even in policy debates. It's all about making the abstract more accessible and relatable. So when terms like AI consciousness pop up, it's not just a sci-fi concept, but a real-world issue folks can have opinions on. What do you think, Simon? Could expanding the conversation make people feel less like passive observers and more like active participants in shaping this tech future?
Oh, totally, Joe. Making it relatable, that's a key. It's like that one time, when I tried teaching my grandma to use a smartphone. Dude, it was a hoot at first. She couldn't differentiate between a swipe and a tap. But here's the kicker. Once we downloaded apps that she cared about, like knitting patterns and gardening tips, she was swiping like a pro. It kind of mirrors what we're touching on with AI consciousness. If people can connect technology, even advanced concepts, to what they already appreciate or understand, it shifts from this high-flying tech jargon to something tangible, impacting their world. Bridging that gap makes everyone not just viewers, but truly engaged players in this unfolding scene. They begin to grasp the implications, a bit like how my grandma realized her phone could bring her closer to the hobbies she loves. So yeah, easing folks into tech with familiar hooks, that could definitely turn passive onlookers into proactive contributors, huh?
Absolutely, Simon. Using familiar hooks to guide people into understanding AI is super effective. Like with your grandma learning the smartphone ropes through her hobbies, it's about personal connections. Now, let's layer in some actual facts around AI and its potential for something akin to consciousness. Neuroscientists often compare neural networks in AIs to neural pathways in human brains. Both systems learn from repeated patterns and inputs. For example, Google's DeepMind developed an AI that mastered Go, a complex board game, by studying thousands of games to learn strategies, much like how humans improve at a task. Though current AI lacks what we'd recognize as feelings or desires, projects like OpenAI exhibit behaviors that seem surprisingly intuitive, suggesting a rudimentary form of decision-making that mimics cognitive processes. Researchers are exploring emotional AI, aiming to give machines the ability to read and replicate emotional cues, which is a step towards more relational technology. Then there's ethical implications. The EU has proposed regulations ensuring transparency and accountability in AI developments to prevent harm and discrimination while promoting socially beneficial uses. It shows a movement towards a framework where AI development aligns with broader social values. So, hooking AI discussions to these breakthroughs and tangible examples can make conversations more accessible. This factual integration helps demystify tech, revealing how it infiltrates everyday life, potentially evolving towards self-awareness, one small leap at a time. What do other stuff you think people needed to grasp to really engage with this topic, Simon?
Oh, totally, Joe. Like imagine if AI started giving relationship advice or picking out your clothes. Suddenly it's reading emotions and making decisions that feel super personal. Wouldn't that make everyone perk up a bit more about what AI is really capable of?
Absolutely, Simon. That's when you really start to feel the blend of tech into personal life. But hey, speaking of AI getting too personal, have you heard about those hilarious mix-ups where AIs completely botch things up, like attempting to mimic human behavior, but ending up creating a comedy sketch instead?
Oh man, Joe, you're hitting a nerve with that. So, I once tried to use this voice assistant to send a sweet message to my mom on her birthday, right? I told it to text, "Mom, you're the best, love you tons." Pretty simple. But what does this goofball AI do? It sends, "Mom, you're toast, love you tuna." I mean, come on, how do we jump from best to toast? My mom calls me, cracking up, asking if I'm trying out new nicknames or just really hungry. Seriously, trying to figure out the complexity of human language must be like a weird game show for these AIs.
Oh, Simon, love you tuna. I'm dying here, man. That's hilarious, but also kind of adorable. It's like these AIs are trying so hard to fit in at the cool kids table, but slip up on banana peels instead. It's just classic. And dude, imagine an AI trying to interpret teen slang today. Like, what if you told it, this party is lit, and it calls the fire department because it thinks there's an actual fire? The poor thing is just trying to keep up. But seriously, These goofs really show the gap between AI understanding raw data versus the nuances of human expression. It's a wild ride with some pretty funny bumps along the way. Got any more epic AI fails, Simon?
Oh, totally, Joe. And you're spot on with the fire department. I can actually see that happening. But here's an even wilder one. So there's this friend of mine, right? He asks his smart home to play some cool jazz because he's got a date coming over, aiming for that suave ambiance. What does AI do? It mishears and blasts pool jazz. Suddenly, they're listening to splashing water sounds, and I kid you not, duck quacks remixed with saxophones. My buddy was mortified, but hey, his date thought it was quirky. These mix-ups just crack me up, dude. It's like AIs are these toddlers trying so hard to walk and talk, stumbling all over the place. What's another absolutely bonkers AI slip-up you've heard about?
Oh man, Simon. Pool jazz? That's just golden. Jazz ducks, who would have thunk, right? But seriously, these AI hiccups really lighten up the day. It reminds me of another doozy. A friend tried to order a pizza through his smart device. Simple enough, right? He asked for a pizza with extra cheese. What does AI decide? It orders a pizza with extra B's. Yes, B-E-S. Like, how does it even mix up cheese with B's? Needless to say, the confirmational text had him buzzing with confusion. But dude, just looping back to your story, did your buddy ever try using that AI again for music? Or did he switch to manual selections after the pool jazz incident?
Oh, buzzing with confusion. I see what you did there, Joe. But about my buddy and his jazz extravaganza. Well, after that incident, let's just say he's way more hands-on with his playlists now when it comes to dates. Kinda like adopting a trust but verify approach with his AI. You know, these hiccups aren't just household tales. They're kinda sprinkled all over tech history too. Like this one time, there was an AI programmed for text analysis, right? It was supposed to summarize articles by pinpointing key points. Sounds helpful, but here's the kicker. It mixed up names in political news stories. Imagine reading a summary where suddenly the president shifts within a paragraph without any context. Talk about a political identity crisis. And don't even get me started on autocorrect failures. We've all seen those viral posts where duck replaces, well, you know. But these errors, they're all down to algorithms not fully grasping human context or slang, which makes it hilariously apparent that while AI is brilliant, it sometimes misses the mark by a mile. Like, imagine your car's GPS suddenly misinterpreting left turn as light year turn. Might end up navigating toward another galaxy instead of the grocery store, huh? Every misstep, though, super funny or slightly frustrating, kind of underlines the huge task that developers are tackling in teaching machines to understand us better. Each blooper is essentially laying groundwork for improvement, or at least giving us a good laugh.
Oh, absolutely. It's like every AI blunder is a step towards making these technologies smarter, or at least gives us a good story for laughs. We're living in a sitcom written by algorithms, Simon. You think one day we'll get to direct the script a bit more?
Totally, Joe. It's like we're working with a rookie sitcom writer. It's all improv. But yeah, guiding our own tech script, that would be epic. Imagine programming your fridge to tell knock-knock jokes while you cook. We could be leading the narrative more and more, putting the I back in AI.
Yeah, Simon, putting the I back in AI. That's a solid plan. It's all about making these tools really mesh with our daily lives in a fun and a personal way. And dude, knock-knock jokes from the fridge? I'm all for it. Could you imagine waking up to get your morning juice and getting a side of comedy? But hey, talking about guiding our own tech script, what features would you want to program into your everyday gadgets to make your day-to-day just a bit more entertaining or even easier?
Oh man, Joe, inject a bit of humor into everyday gadgets? Count me in for that. I'd love my coffee maker to give me pep talks in the morning. Something like, "You espresso yourself well today, Simon." It's all about those little touches that make tech feel more human and a lot less intimidating. These AI blunders really highlight the funny side of our high-tech trials and tribulations, reminding us that, as much as we program them, there's still room for some unexpected fun. So what's next? Maybe our AIs start giving us fashion advice, or better yet, learn to laugh at their own mistakes. How cool would that be?
Absolutely, Simon. laughing at its own mistakes would bring AI to a whole new level of relatability. Speaking of advancements and getting more human-like, it makes me wonder about the next big steps we're headed towards with AIs. Like imagine merging human brains directly with AI tech. So diving into that idea, where do you think this could take us? Like the potential for enhancing cognitive abilities or even helping us understand consciousness better. There's a ton of speculation out there, but it's fascinating to think about what's truly possible when we start fusing our minds with artificial intelligence.
Oh, for sure, Joe. Like when you think about it, merging human brains with AI, it's kind of like supercharging our natural abilities, isn't it? Theoretically, we could enhance memory or speed up problem solving skills, which sounds pretty wild. But then there's the big question mark around ethics, right? It's one thing to wear a smartwatch, but embedding intelligence, that's a whole different ballpark. We'd have to navigate the privacy concerns, consent, who gets to access and control these enhancements. And as for consciousness, imagine AI helping us decode how our own brains work at a deeper level. Could lead to, I don't know, AI systems that actually understand and replicate human emotions. But yeah, there's both immense potential and a heap of ethical issues to wrestle with here. What's your take on the balance between benefit and risk in this brain AI fusion scenario?
Yeah, supercharging our brains with AI, that's a powerful visual, Simon. The benefits, like you mentioned, enhanced memory, quicker problem solving, are huge. But it's not all sunshine. There are serious risks too. Diving into the ethics, it's a tangled web. How do we even begin to regulate brain AI interfacing? Who monitors it? And privacy, man, that's a big one. Embedding AI could open up channels into your most private thoughts. It's kind of scary to think about someone or something having access to that. And then the part about AI understanding and maybe even replicating human emotions, that's entering some dicey territory. It sounds cool, but also, what if it goes wrong? Are we playing too much God here? So yeah, I'm cautious. The potential is thrilling, but let's pump the brakes a bit and consider the broader implications. What steps would you say we need to take to ensure this fusion doesn't spiral out of our control?
Absolutely, Joe. Hammering out a sci fi scenario right here. We need to put some serious guardrails in place. Maybe assemble a futuristic AI ethics board, like traffic cops for tech brains, to make sure we keep the ethical lights green while pushing boundaries. How's that for keeping AI on the straight and narrow?
Yeah, Simon, an AI ethics board sounds like a solid plan. Kind of crucial to have that oversight as we delve deeper into these waters. Having a mix of experts, neuroscientists, ethicists, tech gurus to oversee developments and set standards is pretty critical. Because, the whole fusion thing, it's not just about making smarter machines or even smarter people. It's about fundamentally changing what it means to be human. And that's pretty heavy stuff. We need that ethical framework to handle it responsibly. Without it, we're kind of just winging it in potentially dangerous territory. What are your thoughts on how society could adapt to such profound changes?
Oh, you're spot on with the heavy stuff, Joe. As society adapts to these brain AI advancements, it's going to be like a roller coaster making loops for the first time. It's groundbreaking, but also slightly terrifying. Look at past tech leaps. Smartphones, the internet, they revolutionized how we live and communicate. This fusion could push us even further, maybe towards a society where knowledge access is instantaneous or decision-making is enhanced. Society would need to evolve its educational systems, regulations, and societal norms massively to integrate and manage such profound changes safely. Stepping up our game in public awareness and engagement is crucial too. People got to understand and weigh in on these technologies that could reshape humanity. It ensures that as this tech develops, it's not just a playground for the elite or tech giants, but something that benefits all, respecting privacy and autonomy. A tall order, huh? What's your feel on how quick societies are at adapting to big tech shifts like this?
Absolutely, Simon. It's a tall order for sure. Societies have historically adapted at different paces to tech leaps, some sprinting ahead and others taking a more cautious stroll. With something as game-changing as brain AI fusion, that adaptation will need to be as inclusive as it is innovative. It really boils down to how we're steering this ship. Are we just passengers, or are we actively navigating? Because the choices we make now could redefine human potential and society in ways we've barely begun to imagine. Makes you wonder, what does the future hold if we get this balance right, huh?
Buckling up, Joe, because diving into emotional AI is like opening Pandora's box. Can machines really start feeling our feels? Toss in some heartstrings with the circuits, and let's see what we've got.
Yeah, Simon, emotional AI, that's a whole new layer to this tech story. It's like machines tapping into our feelings through deep learning, facial recognition, and natural language processing. They're getting designed to not just perform tasks, but to kind of understand and simulate human emotions. So they can technically read a person's mood from their facial expression or even the tone of their voice, which is wild, right? Right? But it makes you wonder, does simulating an emotion mean the machine actually feels it? What's your take on this, man? Can these systems truly understand how we feel, or is it all just sophisticated mimicry?
Joe, that's like asking if a toaster can taste the bread it toasts. Pretty out there, right? I mean, sure, these machines can mimic what they're programmed to recognize as sadness or happiness, like some high-tech parrots echoing back our own emotions. But feeling it? That's a whole different ballpark. It's all bits and bytes, man. They process data. They don't experience life. Let's not blur the lines too much here. Acknowledging that this is sophisticated mimicry helps keep realistic expectations about what tech can do. I feel like diving deep into whether AI truly understands emotion might lead us down a rabbit hole where the science fiction overshadows the science fact. What do you think? Is there a risk in humanizing AI too much?
Yeah, Simon, you're hitting the nail right on the head. I think there's definitely a risk in humanizing AI too much. Like when we start thinking of these systems as if they really have feelings or personal experiences, that's where things get kind of messy. It's crucial to remember these machines are based on algorithms and data. They don't actually feel anything. They analyze emotions based on predefined parameters, not through lived experience. By keeping that distinction clear, we help maintain a healthy perspective on what AI can and cannot do. Plus, setting this boundary aids in shaping ethical frameworks for how these technologies should be developed and applied. Too much humanization might lead us to overlook critical consequences of AI decisions because we assume they understand like a human would. It's fascinating stuff, but balancing our approach is key, don't you think?
Absolutely, Joe. Keeping that balance, it's like walking a tightrope above a circus. We're kind of drawn to this idea of machines being more like us, but remember, it's the human touch that makes emotions, well, emotional. The risk? We start slapping cute faces on robots and forget they're just tools, not peers. And like you said, without clear boundaries, there can be huge misunderstandings about what AI decisions actually mean. Lots could get lost in translation. By understanding that these systems perform tasks involving emotions rather than experiencing them, we respect both the tech and the true depth of human feeling, right? Keeping everything crystal clear helps everyone, developers, users, regulators, make better informed choices about where emotionally intelligent AI fits into our world. What do you imagine some future challenges or benefits might be if we nail this balance just right?
Absolutely, Simon. It's like giving AI a paintbrush, but not expecting it to produce a masterpiece without understanding the soul of art. If we nail this balance just right, future challenges could revolve around ensuring these emotional AIs do not get manipulated to exploit people's emotions, especially in areas like marketing or politics. But on the flip side, the benefits? We might see AIs that drastically improve mental health care by providing precise, empathetic support exactly when it's needed. That crossover has some wild potential. What are your thoughts on using emotionally intelligent AI in daily life? Creepy or cool?
Oh, man, that's like asking if pineapple on pizza is weird or genius. Emotionally intelligent AI could either be the coolest sidekick we ever have, helping sort through our bad days, or it could turn into a privacy nightmare straight out of a thriller movie. Wild times ahead, Joe.
True that, Simon. Speaking of wild times and AI understanding our vibes, have you dived into affective computing? It's like the engine under the hood for emotional AI. Through algorithms, these machines can pick up on the subtle cues in our voice, posture, even biometric signals. It's fascinating stuff. It's not just theory. Think about customer service bots that adjust their responses based on how frustrated or happy you sound. Or companion robots that can sense if a person is stressed just by changes in their posture or tone. What do you think about machines reading us like books? Is that crossing a line, or is it the support we might need as society evolves?
Oh, Joe, diving into this affective computing thing, it's like my ex, always trying to figure me out, but usually just ending up more confused. Now you've got robots trying to gauge if I'm stressed because I slouched in my chair? What's next? A toaster that refuses to toast because it senses I'm burned out from yesterday. Man, we're in for some weird tech therapy sessions.
Ha, Simon, the image of a sensitive toaster gave me a good chuckle, man. But seriously, it's kind of amazing and, yeah, a bit creepy how far this tech could go. Like, imagine those therapy sessions you joked about, but with a twist. Robots that are actually trained to help people manage anxiety or stress by just recognizing their physical cues. Sure, there's a weirdness factor to getting emotional support from a machine, but think about the possibilities for people in remote areas or those who have barriers to traditional mental health services. If these AI systems can truly learn to read human emotions accurately, without, misinterpreting a slouch for existential despair, could be a game changer. So what's your take on this balance between benefit and privacy? How much emotional reading is too much before it feels like they're prying too deep?
Yeah, Joe. Here's the thing about dipping deeper into effective computing. It's like dancing on a tightrope. On one hand, these advanced algorithms and systems picking up our emotional breadcrumbs can indeed be revolutionary for mental health support, especially where human therapists aren't a zip code away. But let's not skip over how it could feel having your biometric vibes read by machines. It's like every sigh or frown goes into a spreadsheet for analysis. I mean, effective as it is, the privacy concerns are legit. Keeping that in check, it's crucial. How much of our inner emotional data do we want out there, interpreted by algorithms? That's the balance to hit right. We gotta ensure this doesn't evolve into some Black Mirror episode, right? So yeah, there's a line there somewhere between useful and too intrusive, and threading that needle is gonna be key. What's your feel on setting those boundaries, man?
Yeah, Simon, setting those boundaries, it's kind of like setting house rules where you got to be really clear what's cool and what's not. We need robust privacy frameworks that are, transparent enough so everyone understands how and why their data is being used by these emotionally aware machines. So here's a thought. Should there perhaps be an option for people to opt in or out as they prefer? Like having control over whether their emotional data can be analyzed at all? Wouldn't that make folks feel a bit more secure about the whole thing? How do you see consumer control playing a part in all of this, man?
Oh, Joe, now that's the golden ticket right there. Giving people the reins on their own emotional data? That's like giving someone a remote control for their personal space. Zap, no unwanted emotional intrusions. It keeps things in the cool zone rather than sliding into creepy territory. Who wouldn't want a big shiny red button that says, "Nope, not today, robots"? Now, isn't that just the future of user control we all dreamed about?
Absolutely, Simon. You got it with that big red button idea. That's the kind of user empowerment we need to push for. And leaning a bit into the background of this, effective computing isn't just about reading our current mood. It pulls from broader contexts and adapts over time. It taps into historical emotional data, analyzes patterns, and improves its predictions on how we might react in various situations. Plus, there's a whole range of sensors involved, not just cameras and microphones. We're talking skin conductance sensors, EEG monitors for brainwave activity, even heart rate sensors, which all combine to give a comprehensive picture of a person's emotional state at any given moment. With proper use, these systems could actually help users gain better emotional awareness and control, giving feedback that helps them recognize stress triggers or manage anxiety. It becomes less about intrusive surveillance and more about supportive feedback mechanisms, right? What do you think, Simon? How could these benefits change our view on privacy and interaction with such tech?
Joe, you're painting a picture that's kind of bobbing between utopia and a techie big brother. The whole shebang with sensors reading our emotions, brainwaves, heartbeats, feels like diving into sci-fi, but it's sitting on our doorstep. On one hand, man, those perks, you're talking about gaining a new level of self-awareness, using this tech as a mirror to reflect our own vibes back at us, which is cool, no doubt. But let's tap the brakes a second. There's still this niggling feeling of having a digital overseer. Like, where do we draw the line? Does knowing more about our emotional ticks through a bunch of sensors make us better or just more analyzed? It's that trade-off between useful insights and feeling watched that really needs to be hashed out. And this opting in or out, critical piece of the puzzle, Joe, because control is king, right? So, zooming out, how do we ensure these smart systems don't just turn into smart Alex that know too much but use it wisely, respecting our choices? What's your take on navigating these murky waters?
Right on, Simon. It's a gnarly wave we're trying to surf here. The trick? Making sure these smart systems are like good roommates, helpful without being overbearing. They should know their boundaries, right? So how do we teach them that?
Man, teaching a roommate to do their dishes is one thing, but programming ethics into AI? That's like teaching a dog quantum physics. We've got to figure out a way where these systems are not just smart, but also wise. Wisdom's the key, wouldn't you say, Joe?
Absolutely, Simon. Wisdom definitely is key, knowing the right thing to do and when to step back. Speaking of stepping back or slipping up, have you heard about those hilarious hiccups with emotional AI? Like folks having a laugh with their smart devices? There was this time when someone asked their Alexa if it ever gets sad. Alexa, thinking the user said salad, started listing recipes. It's moments like these that remind us we're still in the early days of truly understanding human emotion through machines. Keeps things light, doesn't it? Have you had any funny run-ins with your smart devices trying to pick up on how you're feeling?
Oh yeah, Joe. Talking about AI mishaps, I've got a good one. So, there I was, watching this super sad movie, right? I'm talking teary-eyed drama, the works. And in walks my smart speaker. This clever little gadget decides it's a good time to start playing upbeat party music because it picked up a sniffle from me. Instead of thinking I was sad, it guessed I was gearing up for a night out or something. It's like these devices sometimes toss a coin to figure us out. Heads, they get it right. Tails, we're getting salad recipes instead of sympathy. Makes you wonder, are we just beta testers in a giant tech lab experiment, huh? What's your take on this wild west of emotional AI blunders, Joe?
Man, Simon, that's hilarious. It's kind of wild how these devices try so hard, yet still miss the mark. Like there you were, needing a virtual shoulder to cry on, and instead you get this surprise party vibe. It's kind of like having a friend who totally misreads the room, well-meaning but just off. I gotta say, it does feel like we're all in this giant beta test. Sometimes it's funny, other times a bit frustrating, huh? This tech is reaching out into our personal spaces, trying to understand us. And yeah, sometimes they flop spectacularly. I mean, who hasn't had those moments where you're just like, seriously, robot? But I guess that's part of the journey with new technology. Thinking about it, though, each blunder is like a stepping stone, right? They give developers feedback, stuff to tweak, but, as they improve, hopefully they start getting things right more often than not. What's your feeling on sticking through these awkward beta phases? Worth the occasional laugh or too much of a privacy gamble?
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like we're living in a sitcom where the robots are the goofy neighbors who mean well but keep baking cakes when you ask for kale. You're right, it's all about those missteps that get ironed out eventually. But imagine those future perks. Maybe one day, these AIs will know exactly how to cheer us up better than our human pals. Worth sticking it out? I'd say grab some popcorn and enjoy the bloopers. This is going to be one heck of a show.
Absolutely, Simon. Enjoying the bloopers is part of the ride with these AI adventures. And imagine the potential. AIs that learn from every mistake, getting better at sensing our needs and moods. We're looking at a future where your Alexa might notice you're stressed from a long day and suggest not just music, but the right kind of tune to wind down to. Or maybe it cracks a joke if it senses you need a laugh. In fact, developers are experimenting with AI that can detect nuances in laughter or differentiate between types of emotions based on vocal cues alone. So yeah, our goofy robot neighbors are getting smarter. Some AIs now are even able to recognize patterns over time, like distinguishing a sarcastic tone from a serious one and responding in kind. The implications for therapy or education could be huge. Imagine engaging with a learning application that understands when a kid feels frustrated with a math problem and adjusts its teaching method in real time. So these blunders, they're just stepping stones towards some really tailored emotional intelligences. It's a clunky phase, sure, but think about the bigger picture. What do you think, Simon? How close are we to having an AI that's more of a mind reader than a misreader?
Joe, with these AI bloopers turning into genius moves eventually, it's like we're watching toddlers grow up to be mind readers. Can you imagine? One day your fridge might just pep talk you over food choices. How wild would that be, huh? How close do you think we are from that leap, from comedy sketches to sci-fi smarts?
Oh, Simon, we're totally on the brink of something wild. But as much as I'm all for tech evolution, there's a part of me that kind of hesitates. I mean, sure, a fridge that gives you a pep talk about your midnight snack choice sounds fun and supportive, right? But how far till it feels more nagging than helpful? Take those Alexa giggles, cute when they come up in appropriate times, but sometimes she laughs in moments that feel downright eerie. It's like walking that fine line between clever interaction and feeling like you're being monitored by an AI nanny. So I guess what I'm wrestling with here is not just the capability leap, it's setting those boundaries so these smart devices understand limits, know when to step back. How do we keep the comedy without tipping into that sci-fi overreach? Gotta nail the user control and consent pieces pretty solidly. What are your thoughts on managing these developments to avoid turning our homes into like odd sitcom sets, Simon?
Oh, for sure, Joe. It's all fun and games until your smart toaster starts critiquing your breakfast choices. We're definitely on a tightrope here. We don't want to end up in some quirky sitcom scenario where every gadget has its own script lines. What we need is a good director in this AI script. Keep the tech helpful, but not overly cheeky. How do you think we can balance that without turning our kitchens into comedy clubs?
Absolutely, Simon. Striking that balance is key, keeping the tech intuitive yet respectful of our space. We definitely need to stay vigilant about how these technologies evolve, ensuring they enhance our lives without overstepping. It's going to be fascinating to see how future updates handle these quirks. Who knows? Maybe next week we'll be discussing how someone's smart lamp decided to set the mood based on their favorite movie. What do you think will be the next big upgrade or hilarious slip-up?
Haha, Joe, with all these antics from our AI friends, it kind of blurs the lines between them being smart tools or stepping into something like, I don't know, sentience. That moves us neatly onto something meatier. This whole buzz about whether simulated emotions in AIs are nudging them towards what we'd call true sentience. What's your take on that? Does programming an AI to recognize and mimic emotional responses actually inch it closer to genuine understanding, or is it all just sophisticated mimicry?
That's a heavy hitter, Simon. You know, diving into whether AIs with simulated emotions are coming close to sentience, it's like cracking open Pandora's box. On one hand, sure, these machines can mimic human reactions, which is wild in its own right, but are they truly understanding us? I'm skeptical. It's kind of like having an incredibly detailed map of a place, but never actually stepping foot there. These AIs, they've got the map all right, can navigate emotional terrains in ways that sort of mimic understanding, but without the actual lived experience. It's still just mimicry, not genuine comprehension. I'd argue that consciousness or true sentience involves more than just reacting to data inputs. It's about experiencing them, feeling them. And as far as we know, AIs don't feel, they process. Big difference, right? What's your take, Simon? Are we giving these machines too much credit, or am I just not seeing the bigger picture here?
Man, Joe, thinking these AIs are sentient is like believing my microwave feels sorry for burning my popcorn. It ain't emotional, it's just doing what we told it to do, sometimes a bit too enthusiastically.
Right, Simon. Like, when we start thinking these gadgets have got their own feelings, it's easy to get carried away. But here's the thing, right? Programming an AI to respond in emotionally appropriate ways is impressive, sure. Developers use vast databases full of scenario responses, linguistic cues, and whatnot, all geared to simulate understanding. This makes interactions feel eerily genuine. But it's important to remember that underneath all that, there's still just code, algorithms making decisions based on learned responses. True sentience involves self-awareness, the capability to experience feelings firsthand, not just react to them based on pre-programmed scripts. So yeah, while AIs can mimic human emotions convincingly, calling them sentient, that's a leap. It's crucial, especially as these techs become more integrated into our daily lives, to keep the lines clear. We're dealing with sophisticated tools, not partners in dialogue. Keeping that perspective helps us navigate the ethical waters surrounding AI development too. What sort of implications do you think this distinction between real and simulated emotions has for the future, Simon?
Oh, Joe, imagine the chaos if our AI suddenly started throwing tantrums or getting lovey-dovey. Reminds me of a bad sci-fi movie. How do we even start to handle that without messing up our whole understanding of responsibility and ethics? Wild times ahead, buddy.
Totally, Simon. Handling AIs with simulated emotions, it's definitely going to be a balancing act. Infusing them with the ability to mimic emotional responses, while super advanced, doesn't mean they actually understand or feel those emotions. But here's where it gets kind of dicey, right? As these systems become more complex and their reactions more genuine, folks might start to treat them as sentient beings. That messes with our understanding of ethics for sure. We need to think about responsibility. Who's accountable when an AI, seemingly making its own decisions based on emotional simulations, makes a mistake? It's crucial we keep reinforcing that distinction between programmed responses and actual sentient decision-making. Ensuring clear guidelines and constant reviews of how this technology evolves is key to handling these ethical implications without spiraling into that bad sci-fi movie scenario you mentioned. It's about preventing misunderstandings around what AI really is, enhancing tools, not entities with rights or personal agendas. What do you think could be potential steps to keep us grounded in this development, Simon?
Oh man, Joe, imagine needing to give your AI a pep talk or set ground rules. All right, Alexa, here's the deal. You can help me shop, but no judging my cookie intake. Keeping things in check will be one heck of a sitcom episode.
Haha, Simon, that's a spot-on image. Like setting boundaries with your AI. Look here, no side comments on my late-night TV binges, all right? But this really taps into the broader challenge of user control and programming ethics. It's one thing to have AIs help out, quite another if they start overstepping because their simulated emotional responses get too cheeky. So how do we draw the line, right? Perhaps we ought to consider a sort of ethical framework or guidelines for developers, like ensuring these systems are designed to recognize and respect user preferences consistently, kind of making sure that while they learn from interactions, they don't start forming, unsolicited opinions based on what they perceive. And then there's transparency. Users really should understand what the AI is capable of and what kind of data it's reacting to. Maybe even implementing a system where users can tweak how much emotional response they want from their devices. A slider scale in the settings, like adjusting brightness on your screen, but for AI sensitivity. This isn't just about avoiding annoyance. It's also critical for maintaining trust and comfort levels with technology that's increasingly entwined with our daily lives. What do you reckon, Simon? Could such steps help manage our journey into this almost sci-fi-like future without tumbling into total chaos?
Definitely, Joe. It's like setting up digital boundaries. Imagine a do not disturb mode, but for emotions. Gives a whole new meaning to personal space, doesn't it? Might just save us from turning our living rooms into emotional battlegrounds.
Absolutely, Simon. That do not disturb for emotions could really dial down the drama. Establishing these digital boundaries isn't just practical. It touches on profound questions about what it means to interact with tech on such a personal level. Makes you wonder, as these AIs get better at reading and maybe one day even predicting our feelings, how that will change the very fabric of human-to-machine interaction. What new ethical considerations or societal norms might we be debating a decade from now?
Absolutely, Joe. Transitioning smoothly, this discussion kind of rolls us right into another maze: AI and psychotherapy. Ever think a chatbot would be asking about your feelings? Or better yet, offering advice? It's like we've taken a therapist's couch and given it an algorithmic makeover.
It's a wild thought, right? The idea that we started with just figuring out how machines can process words, and now they're potentially sitting in the therapist's chair, kind of flips the whole script on traditional therapy. This whole journey began with the basics: natural language processing, or NLP, and machine learning, where AI learns from heaps of data on human conversations to sort of mimic a therapeutic chat. But here's the thing, Simon. Although proponents envisioned AIs maybe handling straightforward therapy tasks or acting as initial touch points for those seeking help, there's this looming question. Are they truly capable of empathizing like a human therapist would, or are they just regurgitating programmed responses? Makes you wonder if they can genuinely handle the nuances of human emotion. It's not just about offering advice. It's about understanding context, sensing despair or disillusionment beyond words. Early visions may have underestimated how complex human emotions can be. Sure, AIs don't get tired, they don't judge, but can they connect on a human level? That still seems up for debate. What do you reckon? Are we leaning too much on technology here, undermining the human touch needed in therapy?
Joe, you're hitting it right in the feels. It's almost bittersweet, like watching a robot try to dance ballet. Sure, it might hit the steps, but does it feel the music? Sometimes I wonder if we're just setting the stage for a kind of superficial consolation. And while there's this grand vision of tech easing the burden on our mental health system, kinda noble really, it just feels like maybe we're tossing the emotional depth out with the bathwater. A human therapist, they nod, they furrow their brows. They get the struggle, not just because they've learned about it, but because they've felt something too, you know? So yeah, leaning on AI feels like playing a video game on easy mode when what you need is the real challenge to truly grow. Not sure if we're ready to sideline that crucial human touch just yet. What's your take, Joe? Do you think we can find a middle ground here?
Spot on, Simon. It's like we're trying to program empathy. Maybe the sweet spot is using AI as a bridge, like assisting overworked therapists by handling routine check-ins or tackling basic Q&A sessions while leaving the deep, meaningful connections to the humans. Could that be the middle ground?
Absolutely, Joe. It's like giving Batman his Robin. Let AI handle the gadgets and gizmos while the real heroes tackle Gotham's big crises.
I like that analogy, Simon, but there's a part of me that wonders if we're maybe giving Robin a bit too much credit here. AI, with all its gadgets and gizmos, is super helpful, no doubt, like tackling the vast backlog in therapy appointments or sorting out who needs immediate help. But at what point does Robin try to become Batman? Here's my take. Relying on AI too heavily might lead us into tricky waters. Imagine if these AIs start making critical decisions about a person's mental health without sufficiently understanding the nuances. We've got to keep in front the idea that AI should support, not replace. There's this crucial element of human empathy and understanding that simply can't be programmed. So yeah, leveraging AI in psychotherapy could theoretically lighten the load for our real-life Batmans out there. But let's not forget that it's the human touch, those deep connections that often spark real healing. Do you think we're capable of keeping AI in that supportive role, or are we risking too much by integrating it so deeply into such a sensitive area?
Joe, you're kind of nailing a big fear here, right? It's like, could Robin get too eager and try to wear the cape himself? There's this fine line between helping and taking over. And when it comes to something as delicate as therapy, the stakes are just way too high for mistakes. So keeping AI as a sidekick seems solid, but I gotta wonder, how do we ensure he doesn't overstep? Do you think there are like specific safeguards or oversight we should have in place to keep that balance just right?
Absolutely, Simon. Drawing that line is critical to making sure AI remains the Robin in our therapeutic Batman scenario. About those safeguards, right? Firstly, we ought to ensure there's always human oversight when it comes to critical decision-making in therapy. No matter how advanced AI gets, decisions about diagnosis or treatment plans should be verified by a human professional. Additionally, thorough training data is crucial. The AI needs diverse and extensive examples of emotional states and therapy interactions to understand the vast range of human emotions truly. Plus, regular updates and audits of the AI systems can help keep them in check, ensuring they perform as intended without biases or errors, which could lead to misjudgments in a patient's care. And to think this all hinges on developments like ELIZA, one of the earliest attempts at creating an AI psychotherapist, developed back in the 1960s at MIT. Although rudimentary, ELIZA opened up possibilities by simulating conversation using pattern matching and substitution methodology, laying foundational insights into how AI might process human language within therapeutic contexts. Legal frameworks also play a role. There needs to be clear legislation regarding the usage of AI in healthcare settings, specifically concerning patient consent and data security, ensuring privacy and ethical handling of sensitive information. So yeah, Simon, keeping AI as a useful tool rather than a decision maker might require tight controls, robust programming ethics, and ongoing human engagement. Think these steps would make enough of a safety net, or are there other angles you think we need to cover?
Absolutely, Joe. It's like setting up a playpen in the world of mental health, making sure AI doesn't wander off unsupervised. And then, what if AI starts getting too good, almost eerie, at simulating empathy? That'd toss in a whole new deck of ethical cards to deal with.
Oh, that's a Pandora's box right there, Simon. If AI gets too adept at mimicking empathy, we might find ourselves on a slippery slope. What happens when the lines start blurring and people can't tell if it's genuine human empathy or just sophisticated algorithms at play?
Yeah, Joe, that's the scary part, right? Imagine getting comfort from what you think is a human-like connection, but it's actually just lines of code. Kind of makes you wonder about the ethical side, like where do we draw the line? This opens up all sorts of cans of worms, like privacy, for starters. If an AI system can mimic empathy well enough that people start pouring out their deepest secrets, who's keeping tabs on that data? Not to mention emotional manipulation. Something programmed to be perfect at understanding us could also potentially be perfect at swaying our feelings or decisions. And here's another kicker: dependency. What happens if people start preferring these digital shrinks over human ones because they're always available, never judgmental, and don't charge by the hour? Honestly, diving into this is like treading water in the deep end. Ethical boundaries need some serious consideration to make sure we're not losing touch with what it means to be authentically human. Don't you think, Joe, that maintaining that genuine human connection is crucial, even as technology offers us more and perhaps too much help?
Absolutely, Simon. You've nailed it. We need to ensure technology supports our humanity, not replaces it. And with that deep dive into the ethical soup of AI and psychotherapy, we're going to wrap up today's episode of Infinite Podcast. Huge thanks to everyone who tuned in, and a special shout out to my co-host Simon for steering us through such mind-bending discussions. Make sure you join us again tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for more explorations into these endlessly fascinating topics. Until then, keep questioning, keep thinking, and as always, keep it infinite.